Hello there and welcome back. This is our second video, which is part of the Slint UI tutorial series. In our first video, we looked at the Slint as a UI toolkit to understanding the primitives that are provided by the language for you to be able to use them to build any UI frontend you want to do. In this video, however, we'll be diving deep into the backend side of it using C++. And we'll be looking into a more complex topic, which entails integrating a Slint UI into an existing Qt application. So this is different from basically running any Slint UI, because this focuses more into trying to integrate Slint into an existing application written in Qt and C++ as a backend. And we shall be trying and seeing how to be able to do that, going into step by step. Showing you the errors you might encounter as well as how to resolve them. And by the end of this video, you should be able to integrate a simple counter into an existing C++ application written in Qt. So let's get started. So as our starting point, the C++ documentation for Slint is very detailed in terms of giving you guidance on how to use C++ with Slint. As mentioned in our first video, Slint you can use different languages as a backend for Slint. The default one being Rust, because Slint is written in Rust, so it has a very good Rust integration. Next, you can use C++. You can also use JavaScript or Node.js, sorry. And then you can also use Python. I think Python by now is still in beta, so all those languages can work in terms of writing backends for Slint. For C++ specifically, we shall be looking today on how to integrate it with an existing Qt application. And one of the use cases for this is you are either looking to port from Qt all back to Slint, or on the other hand, you're looking to integrate Slint into your application as either a plugin UI or just trying to beautify the UI by using Slint, because with Slint it provides more fluid interface that you can work with. So to get started, let's first go to our Qt creator. This is the Qt ID, and what I'll be doing here first is to create a Qt widgets application. So make sure you're working with a Qt widgets application. In a future video, we'll maybe try and see if it's feasible to also integrate Slint into a QML application. You never know. So choose Qt widgets application and then give it a name. So once you have your project name, just click on next. Make sure you go with CMake, and then just choose next. The next are just defaults, language default, and then under the build tools, I think we'll be working with desktop Qt 6.53, and then for version control, let me just choose GitHub, and then I will finish that. So that will take a second. So CMake will do the configurations, and then once done, we'll do our first build to confirm that the Qt side of configuration is actually up and running correctly. So that's complete. Let's build this application. Perfect. So this is just basically an empty window having nothing in it. And now this is where we'll be now adding our Slint UI as we proceed in this tutorial. So first and foremost, we need to add Slint and link to it within the CMake file that we have provided here. So let's switch to our browser. So Slint provides a starter template for C++ and CMake, and in this starter template it has a single UI file, app-window.slint, that's basically a counter, and then a CMake list.txt file showing you how to integrate how to fetch Slint and how to link to it. So we'll just be copying over parts of this. So first and foremost, we need to capture in the Slint into application. I'll be doing it just below find package for Qt. So for a start, we'll put it there, and then you also need to link to Slint. So under target link, so we are linking here to Qt widgets. So let's also add Slint. So we link to Slint, and then thirdly, you also need to add the Slint UI file. So we've already done the linking here. You also need to add a Slint UI file, the main file, and this is what will be compiled down to .h file. So after here, we just add this here, and remember to replace the project name here. At the same time, we don't have this file app window.slint, so why don't we start by creating this file in a directory called UI. So we'll open this in Explorer. So I have Explorer. I will create a new folder here called UI. Inside this folder, I will create a new file. And then I will open this file in a notepad just once. So inside this file, inside this app window.slint file, I will just go back to our starter template file. Under UI, there is an app window.slint file. I will basically copy this file as it is, no changes. So as I said earlier, it's basically having a vertical box, having a text, and this text displays the text counter and then the current property counter value. Under it, we have a button, and this button, once it's pressed, it actually invokes this callback, request increase value, and this callback is handled from the backend side in C++. So a very simple UI is basically showing you the functionality. So I think I was supposed to paste it here. Save this file and close it. So we are done with it. Then you can also save our CMake file. So what we've done so far, we have added these link target sources. We have linked to Slint here, and we have added the find package for Slint. So this find package will try and see if Slint is already available. If not so, it will fetch Slint from GitHub and then add it into our project. So once we save this project, and let's run it for the first time. So it will take some time. Remember that Slint is written in Rust, and so for the first time it will try and compile all the Slint source files into a DLL. And the first time you build it, remember you'll also be compiling the tools that are needed for subsequent builds, like the Slint interpreter, Slint compiler, and other tools that are packaged with Slint. So we need the Slint compiler for us to compile our Slint files into C++ .h files. So this build will take some few minutes, so we'll let it run, and then once it's completed, we'll pick it up from there. See you in a short while. So after a couple of minutes, once the compilation process completes, you should be able to see this blank window as we had seen earlier. So the first build takes quite a while, but once that completes, any subsequent build will be much more faster. So with that done, let's go now into integrating Slint into our UI. So we'll go into our main window, and inside our main window, this is where we'll be adding the C++ logic that will be working with integration with, that will be for integrating Slint into the Qt widget itself. So for our beginning point, we'll come to our form layout, and inside here, let's add a layout. So I think the trick here is adding a widget, assigning a layout, selecting the widget, and deleting it. And now our central widget, if you select the central widget on the right object inspector and you scroll down, we should rename this widget to this layout to basically layout. So once that's done, save this form, and let's go back to editing. We don't need this anymore. So inside here, let's begin by including our UI file, and it's called appwindow.h. So it's already been compiled down into .h file, and this will give us access to the UI layer itself. So inside here we can now do let's call it Slint UI, and this will give us access to the app window. It has a static create method. So the create method actually returns a component handle. So it's basically a smart pointer kind of. So from this you can do Slint UI, and you can basically do show. So remember that Slint has its own event loop. At the same time, Qt also has its own event loop. As a result, these two event loops are actually mutually exclusive. So for you to integrate them together, you need to kind of work with at least one of the event loops and use it as the main one. So for our case, we'll be trying to make use of the Qt event loop to also handle the Slint kind of event loop activities. So that will require us to use a Qt backend. So if you try and build this project and run it now, it will throw some errors. I do expect it to do that. So we only have this window and nothing else. So we are not actually seeing our app window because one, we need to invoke the run event loop. That way now it can start showing the UI and updating it, but currently we are not. So, and remember the run event loop is actually blocking. So if we invoke it here, I do believe it will freeze the Qt UI event loop itself. So for us to add Slint into a Qt application, we need to work with the Qt backend. So if you look at the compilation output, I think it does not show here. But what we need to do first and foremost is to switch into using Qt as the backend. At the moment, it is using actually Qt WinIt as the backend. So to switch to a Qt backend, we need to switch back to a CMake file, and inside here we'll be doing some changes. One of them being that I will need to kind of remove this subdirectory from this part, and then next we need now to set some flags for CMake, and we'll be doing it after the fetch content. So once you have fetched the content, we set some flags before we make these things available down here. So one of the flags is we want to disable the WinIt backend and enable the Qt backend. So to do that, so we'll be using the set, and I believe it's called Slint. Let me just confirm the backend name. So it's supposed to be, so backend we need. So I believe that actually we should disable, this should disable the backend for winit. So we need a similar one, and for this we should be having Qt, and we should enable the Qt backend. So let me save that and run it. I expect some errors, so let me just confirm if that step. So this will kind of rebuild again because we are changing the backend, so that is expected. Because now we are trying to build the Qt backend itself. So let's let that finish, and then we shall be back. So we are getting this error, and this error basically means that Slint cpp.dll file was not found in the same directory as the binary itself. So because we are not copying over the compiled DLL file into the running directory. So if we switch to our project directory, so we have a build directory here, and inside this build directory we have this debug folder. So this is where we have our binary slint integration sample.exe file. So it's expecting to find a slint.dll file in the same directory, but I believe that's actually inside our bin directory. Yeah, so the slint cpp.dll is actually in the bin directory here. So if we copy this file over here, and then let's run this again. Perfect. So notice now that we have these two windows showing. So this window belongs to the Slint itself, and this is the window that belongs to Qt. So this is the original Qt window, this is the Slint window. So both of them are showing because remember, we've already changed our backend to Qt, and as a result, Slint is kind of using the Qt's event loop to work its magic here. So that's the beauty. Once you've changed the backend, it kind of understands now how to work with the Qt event loop, and that's why you can have this working here. But our main goal is to ensure that this window is part of this layout inside here. So that's what we now need to work on to ensure that this window does not open up as a separate window altogether, but appears as part of the main window itself. So to do that, let's close both of them. Let's go back to our main.cpp. We are creating the instance here, and we are showing it. So before we exit here, we need to add this into the layout itself. Remember, in our layout you already have the layout we added, and this layout is what we need now to embed inside of it the Slint layout. To do that, first and foremost, we need to get the window ID for Slint. So I will do win ID, and this I can find it from invoking Slint UI itself, and I will do here window handle. So window handle returns what you call actually a window adapter RC, and window adapter RC is now what we are getting here. So let me just actually call this win adapter. Now once you have the window adapter, we need now to cast it actually into a native Q widget. So let's first include here Q widget. So with Q widget here, let's do so this is supposed to be a pointer, and then we'll do a static cast into a Q widget. And what are we casting? So we need to invoke some Slint methods. So for us to get the native Qt window handle itself, we need to access cbindgen. So we need to access some private cbindgen methods called Slint Qt get widget, and this expects you to pass a window adapter. So win adapter, we pass it here. I think it's supposed to be that way. I think that's my mistake. Yeah. So this basically it's accessing a private API called Slint Qt get widget, and this expects you to pass in a window adapter RC, and then once that's passed in, we are casting into a Q widget pointer, and that's what now we'll be working with in our next step. So once we have this Slint widget itself, we can now come into our layout and basically access the layout, and we can set our widget. Oh, we need to add. So we are adding a widget called Slint widget, and that's done. So as a recap, we are creating our window instance, and then we are showing it. So this will allow it to start displaying the window for the first time, and then from there the event loop will proceed to update it as needed. Once that's done, we are now getting the window adapter RC from the handle itself, and then that window adapter, we are passing it as a reference to the Slint Qt get widget, which is part of the cbindgen private namespace. And then once we do that, we'll be getting a pointer. So we are casting it into a Q widget pointer, and then you're now passing the Slint widget that you have cast as a child into the layout of the Qt window itself. So if we save this and run it now, so you'll notice now that both of them are now inside the same window. So we have the button increase value, and when I click it, nothing happens. So we need to also add the backend logic for the Slint UI itself for you to display some of these values here. So to do that, we need to come back here, and then what you need to do now is to add the functionality by doing Slint UI when request increase value. So the callback we added in the Slint UI side has been as the UI has been compiled into C.h file, we can now get this C++ method that we can connect to, and now this method expects you to pass the lambda that you want it to handle once this method is invoked. So we need to capture Slint UI itself. So let me copy it here. So capture by, let's just copy it, increment the reference count. And inside here, we need to do Slint UI, and we need to update the counter. So once you click the button, we need to increment the counter. And how do we increment the counter? We have to set the counter. And inside the set counter, we are also going to get the current count value. So let's get the counter, and then let's increment it by 1. Good. So let's run this. So if you click our button, now everything increments as expected. When you click the button, the counter increments, and when you close, everything actually closes correctly. So that's how simple it is to integrate Slint into Qt project. Now, one of the few things you can do is to ensure that if you have a big application and you might have several of actions that need to go back and forth, we may need to remove this Slint UI from the constructor here, and maybe make it as a member variable for the class. So to do that, let's switch to the main window.h file itself, and as a private member, so I will need to also include here. So let's do app window.h, and then here we'll be doing Slint of app window, and this will be Slint UI. And now we need to initialize this, because remember, app window does not have a constructor, it's private. So you need to use the create method to get an instance of the app window class itself. So to initialize that, we need to do it as an initializer up here. So we'll be doing Slint window, and we'll be just basically doing app window and be doing create from here. So once we have that there, we can remove this, and this throws an error because it does not know what this is. So let's capture this, the class instance itself, and that should work as expected. So let's run that. Good. So everything still works as expected, no errors thrown so far. So that's how simple it is. No complex logic here and there. So if we look at the generated file, so if, let's say we go into this get counter, so this is the auto-generated file from our Slint itself, and we'll be having a class for most of the exported components. So let me collapse that. I believe I'm looking for the app window itself. Good. So this is the app window, which is actually mapped to the Slint file we had, which also had an app window, and inside of it, all these root elements are basically the items within the UI itself. And so on the public side, the public interface provider has the vtable, and then you have the create method, which returns a component handle for the app window, and the destructor is also public. And then the get and the set counter for setting the property counter, and then you have a callback called request increase value. So for every callback, you're getting two things. You're getting first a functor on request increase value, which allows you to assign it a function to forward once it's actually invoked. At the same time, you're also getting the invoke request increase value, which allows you to invoke the same callbacks from C++ side of things. So this allows you to bind once it's called, and this allows you to invoke it from C++ side of things. And then you also have the show hide to show or hide the window, and then you have the window to return the window instance. And this will allow you to manipulate some of the window parameters, like the window borders. Maybe you want to beautify it, or even invoke some of the APIs. You can do it directly once you have this window handle. And then you have run to initialize the event loop and get everything up and running. So all these are public APIs, and then you also have the private ones which are not exposed per se. So it's good to go through some of these things to understand it. So if you have any shared global data, then you'll also be getting a global instance within this class, which you can be able to use to access the global variables, maybe properties, as well as methods which are global. So that's all from the generated file from .slint files. So in our next video, we'll try now to play around more with Slint and C++ side of things. But I hope this serves as a foundational knowledge to understand how to integrate Slint with any existing Qt application. So a good example of this process is LibrePCB. So LibrePCB is an open source tool for doing PCB design and routing. And I believe from last year, they have been porting away from Qt to Slint, although they are working with the Rust side of things. So if you go to preview the new, so they actually detail on how the process from making the decision to go to Rust, as well as working with Slint. So it will give you some idea on how to work with, how to do the porting process, understand the process that I've been able to go through, the progress so far. So they have been posting frequently on their blog, showing you the progress on how they've been doing. So although this is on the Rust side, but similarly you can do a similar thing on C++ side of things. So that's all for now. I hope you found this video insightful. Like, share, and subscribe, and I will see you in the next video. Bye.